Hey there, I'm Melissa, and today I'm going to be reviewing Emerald Fennell's directorial debut, Promising Young Woman. At first, I thought that this review was going to be coming out super late because the movie did come out in very early 2020, but given the recent buzz around its nomination at the upcoming Oscar Awards, I thought it was relevant again. So just before we get started, I'm also going to put a content warning on this video just because if you don't already know, the movie does deal with topics of sexual assault and rape, so we will be discussing those things today. So Promising Young Woman follows our main protagonist Cassie as she tries to seek revenge on all of the people that were involved in her best friend Nina's sexual assault back when they were all in med school about 7 to 10 years ago. And while she's also seeking revenge, she's also luring in predatory men and teaching them a lesson. It's kind of a dark comedy thriller revenge movie. Emerald Fennell, if you don't already know, directed slash produced, I think, season 2 of Killing Eve, which in my opinion was not as good as season 1. So if that tells you anything about how this movie's gonna go, that should be your clue. One of the things that really stands out for me in this movie is just the vibes. They are impeccable. The production design team, you can tell, really got to have a lot of fun when it came to like making the cafe as well as the pharmacy. A lot of this movie has a really fun, girly, feminine, bubblegum pop kind of aesthetic and kind of vibe, which I think is very pleasing, especially given the context and what this film is about. I think a lot of the time revenge movies have a very masculine feel. Even if it does have a female lead, you can definitely tell that like everything about it just screams masculine, very Axe body spray. But this movie doesn't lean into that masculine vibe at all, especially given the topic that this is trying to address. It is kind of fun that they didn't really lean into going into that masculine space and they kept it really focused on the femininity. Also, I feel like these vibes that you get from the production design and some of the cinematography and costuming, you also get with her characterization of the main character in terms of she's not overly masculine, she's not overcompensating to make her actions maybe seem like more realistic. They're not turning her into a man. I feel like kind of along with that, the soundtrack also fits these bubblegum feminine vibes really perfectly because they chose a lot of artists and pop singers that were, you know, famous pop ladies of the 2000s that were kind of treated unjustly by society and maybe by the press as a whole. There's a whole sequence with the Paris Hilton song, I'm forgetting it now. It's like the stars are out, not the stars are out tonight. Stars fall, starshine. It's a song about stars and it's by Paris Hilton. That's all you need to know. As well as if you've seen any of the trailers, they have that Britney Spears cover of Toxic. So they focus mostly a lot on ladies that have been mistreated by the pop industry. That being said, even though these are a lot of like famous songs, they're not totally distracting, and when they want you to notice something, like you might notice that Paris Hilton song, like they pointed out in the movie too. They're like, are you listening to this Paris Hilton song right now? So it's all kind of woven into the narrative, which I do think is smart, especially when you bring recognizable music into your movie. These bubblegum pink vibes definitely do not translate. I feel like in the second half of the film, they kind of just drop it off almost entirely, which is very disappointing. I think some of this has to do with maybe them wanting to keep it grounded in reality, which personally, I feel like it should have gone full fantasy, just really lean into that aesthetic. But also I think it has to do with some of the locations that they chose to set the film in, like a hospital. And if you wanted to seem kind of realistic, you can't really make a hospital look like Weenie Hut Jr.'s as much as I wish we could. Speaking of other things that I like, performances, I would say this is the only thing that could be potentially award worthy with the Oscars, but I don't even think she was nominated. But Carey Mulligan did an excellent job in this role. She really showed this character a lot of empathy, which really lent itself well when the character's maybe doing some more questionable things. The only thing I knew her from before was The Great Gatsby, and even then I had to look up what she's even been in before for me to even remember she was in The Great Gatsby. So I think this is a really big role for her and it really shows that she has a lot of talent. The last thing I would say that are on my likes list are how they treat the male characters of this movie. Now, if you don't want to get like any spoilers whatsoever, please skip to the time code wherever it's gonna be. But anyway, all of the male characters in this movie at some point will disappoint you. It's definitely a range of disappointment. I was really nervous when they brought in this Bo Burnham boyfriend character, that he was going to be redeemable and one of those, he's the only good guy and he shows her that men are great, and he also fucks up. Even him, even he's not safe. It's really nice to see this kind of representation for men. I'm very happy that it was done. And along those lines, any of the other kind of side male characters are all like very two-dimensional, and they have dialogue that is, some people might find it cringe, and I totally get that, and some people might think that it's too two-dimensional and too bland and kind of just sounds like the shit you would see on those like "Are Nice Guy" Reddit compilation videos. A lot of these male characters are kind of caricatures of predatory figures that we think of when we're talking about rape and rape culture, which might not be the most nuanced or interesting take, but given the fact that usually in a lot of side supporting roles, a lot of women are also kind of treated like caricatures of women, I'm kind of okay with it for this movie. Okay, so next I'm gonna get into my dislikes, which when I look at my notes, it looks kind of like a laundry list, but I think I'm gonna get through these in a reasonable amount of time. So on the topic of characterizations, I feel like Cassie's character was really muddled and the writers didn't really know what to do with her most of the time. And I generally feel like the sentiment of they didn't really know what route they wanted to take can be applied to the movie as a whole, but we'll get into that later. Sometimes it looks like they want to make Cassie's character like a complete sociopath who's just full of like female rage and just wants to let it out. I think an example of that would be the truck scene. Even though it's not completely unjustified, it's definitely an overreaction as to what's going on. And I think sometimes in the trailer they make her out to be this like crazy woman who's out for vigilante justice, which I'm all for. I would love to see her fuck up some shit. But I would say throughout the entire movie, she doesn't really do anything that's that bad. I think they didn't want her character to be too like morally gray or dislikable, but I think that kind of in turn just made it kind of a weaker narrative as a whole. And the whole point of it is supposed to be a revenge movie, and it doesn't ever really feel like that's going on. Nothing is like really satisfying to your core. She doesn't really do anything that makes you go like, ah, finally, justice. I think it was a huge mistake on the writing, directing, producing side of things to play on that safe side. Because I feel like it's very clear that you can have characters that are absolutely horrible and even villains that people still root for and cheer for, and Cassie has plenty of reason to be acting up. Even with revenge movies where the situation is so far removed from what I would ever experience, you can still feel that catharsis because you're engaged with that character and you're engaged with this character, but you never get that catharsis. So yeah, as I said before, I think a huge flaw of this movie has to do with its inability to commit to any particular kind of lane or route it wants to go to. It kind of just toes the line between being really safe and just letting her unleash all of her female rage, that it kind of just is very unsatisfying. I think it doesn't really know what it wants to say about rape culture besides it's bad, which and I feel like this kind of towing the line thing can really be exemplified in the ending. I won't get into it right now, but it will be at the end in the like spoiler zone. So the writers and producers didn't know what they wanted audience members to take away from this movie. Even when they did decide to go with a twist, they didn't stick with it, so it made the whole thing just kind of feel like cheap and kind of like a cop-out. And speaking of cops, why do we rely on them so much in this movie? Why are they seen as the good guys in this movie? Because notoriously, historically, they are not, and it's just, given the subject nature, it's, someone should have thought about that. Someone should have said no. So, now on to the more spoilery bit. I would say, first of all, I think this movie did an excellent job at treating violence against women with a lot of empathy and care. So often it's very brutalized and, I don't know, tries to be sexy or glamorized. I'm in particular talking about that scene. I think that was done with a lot of care and makes you feel it just breaks you, it really does. I thought the name motif throughout the movie was genuinely pretty interesting and pretty cool. Throughout the movie, names are really, really important. I think that this was something that they did think about a bit and was treated with a bit of thought and care. Like whenever the predatory men want to get with her, the thing that always at the end of the day gives it away is they never know Cassie's name. This relates really well back to a lot of real life situations, maybe famous cases that we hear about too, especially with famous ones ones, you so often hear about the perpetrator and you kind of entirely forget about this entirely other person who is affected much worse by this event than the perpetrator was. The perpetrator's name always holds a certain power and a certain weight that the victims usually just, it never will. And usually whenever a victim is referenced, it's always in conjunction with their perpetrator's name and forever tying them to this one person who they probably just want to move on from and get over and grow from. And obviously this motif can be seen in a lot of places in this movie, but mostly it's with Nina. She is the best friend of Cassie and she's dead, and everyone else throughout the movie, whenever, you know, Cassie's trying to bring Nina up, they always seem to forget her, but they always remember the perpetrator's name. If I had to say, overall, this movie's downfall is the marketing. I think the trailer really presents an entirely different movie than what you're actually given, as well as the writers and producers and Emerald Fennell as the director's inability to choose what they wanted this movie to say and what lane they wanted to take this movie down. Both in the plot of this movie and the characterization of a lot of the main characters, but also just about rape and rape culture. This movie does not have a nuanced take whatsoever on rape, sexual assault, and rape culture. It's kind of just her girl bossing her way through the entire thing. If I had to rate this movie, I would give it 4.5 sexy nurse costumes out of 10. Maybe that feels a little harsh. Maybe I would bump it up to a 5, but I'm feeling really comfortable at this 4.5. There's a lot that could be improved with this movie. There are some good things, like I said, the production design, soundtrack, and performances, mostly from Carey Mulligan, everyone else is whatever, but on the whole, there could be a lot to be worked on here. And the girl boss energy is a tad off-putting. It's big girl boss, neo-lib, CEO Margaret Thatcher energy. In terms of recommendations, if you're looking for another like big Hollywood blockbuster movie about a woman who's taking control of her own narrative, Birds of Prey, I cannot recommend enough. Even though it's a superhero movie and I'm kind of over those, Birds of Prey is an excellent film. And if you are looking for something that does focus on rape and sexual assault and rape culture, everyone's been talking about I May Destroy You. I actually got into watching it right after Promising Young Woman because I wanted something to kind of revive my spirit of like, we can say something important and knowledgeable in movies and television. So yeah, thank you so much for watching my review of Promising Young Woman. I'm looking forward to doing some more movie reviews in the future, so if you have any recommendations, leave them down below in the comments and let me know what you guys thought of this movie. I would love to hear your thoughts. I think we can have a really good, productive conversation about this. I will hopefully see you all again soon. Bye!